Imagine you started with nothing. No royal blood, no noble title, no army, no palace, no name that anyone feared. You were a slave, born into poverty, sold into servitude, spending your early years herding livestock in the blistering deserts of Persia. But 40 years later, you had conquered more land than Napoleon. You had looted more gold than any king in history. You had made the entire world tremble at the sound of your name. And then, in one single night, in the darkness of your own tent, the men you trusted most put a sword through your throat. This is the story of Nader Shah, the man who rose from literal slavery to become the most powerful conqueror of the 18th century, and why, in the end, it was his own soldiers who killed him. Walk with me as I take you on another journey through the eyes of history. The year is 1688. Persia, or what we now call Iran, is a land in slow collapse. The once great Safavid Empire is rotting from the inside. Weak kings sit on the throne. Corrupt officials drain the treasury. Foreign invaders are circling. And in this chaos, a boy is born in the northeastern province of Khorasan, a harsh sun-scorched land of dust and warfare. His name is Nader. His family is poor. So poor that after his father dies, Nader and his mother are captured by Uzbek raiders and sold into slavery. This boy, who would one day loot the throne of India, spent his teenage years as a slave doing back-breaking labor under someone else's ownership. But Nader was not like other slaves. He had something burning inside him that couldn't be chained, an ungodly ambition, a fury, a hunger for power so intense it was almost terrifying. He eventually escaped. He joined a small tribal militia, and then something happened that will define everything that came after. He realized he was extraordinary at war, not just good, not just brave, extraordinary. He had an instinct for tactics that other commanders had to study for decades. He could read a battlefield the way a chess grandmaster reads a board, always 3 moves ahead. He was fearless to the point of madness, but never reckless, and he had a voice, a commanding presence that made men want to follow him into fire. Within years, he had risen from a nobody with a sword to the commander of a growing army. Persia was about to meet its new master. By 1722, the Safavid Empire had completely collapsed. Afghan warriors, the Ghilzai Afghans, had invaded, swept through Persia like wildfire, and captured the capital, Isfahan. The Safavid king, Shah Sultan Hussein, was so weak and useless that he personally walked out of his own palace and handed his crown to the Afghan commander. He just gave it up. No fights, no dignity, nothing. Persia was occupied, humiliated, broken. But Nader saw something no one else saw, an opportunity. He aligned himself with the surviving Safavid prince, Tahmasp II, offering to fight for the dynasty, not out of loyalty, not out of love for the royal family. No, Nader understood something cold and strategic. A puppet king is the perfect cover for a man who wants real power. Therefore, using Tahmasp's name as his banner, Nader began one of the most stunning military campaigns in Persian history. He drove the Afghans back. He recaptured Isfahan. He secured the borders. He pushed the Ottomans back from the west and the Russians back from the north. In less than a decade, this former slave had rebuilt an empire from rubble. The people praised him. The soldiers adored him. The Persian world looked at Nader and saw something they hadn't seen in generations, a real leader. But here is where the story starts to turn dark, because Nader was not doing this for Persia. He was not doing this for the Safavid dynasty. He was not doing this for the people. He was doing it for himself. And the moment he had squeezed every last drop of usefulness out of the Safavid name, he threw it away. In 1736, Nader called a great assembly, a cruelty of tribal chiefs, military commanders, and religious leaders. And in a theatrical performance of false humility that fooled absolutely no one, he reluctantly accepted the crown of Persia. The Safavid dynasty was over. Nader Shah was now the king of kings. Now ruling Persia, Nader needed one thing above everything else: money. Wars are expensive, armies need to be paid, and Nader had been fighting non-stop for years, which meant the Persian treasury was nearly empty. He looked east, and he saw something that made his eyes light up with pure, calculated greed: the Mughal Empire of India. Once the richest civilization on earth, home to the Peacock Throne, a seat encrusted with diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and pearls so extravagant it took 7 years to build. Home to the Kohinoor diamond, one of the largest diamonds ever found. Home to cities overflowing with silk, gold, and treasure accumulated over centuries. But by 1738, the Mughals were weak. The emperor, Nader Shah, was known less for his military genius and more for his love of kite flying and poetry. His empire was fragile. Nader marched. His army crossed the Khyber Pass, the deadly mountain gateway into India. The Mughals sent a massive force to stop him. The two armies met at the Battle of Karnal in February 1739. It lasted 3 hours. Nader destroyed the Mughal army so completely and so quickly that historians were genuinely shocked by the speed. He then marched into Delhi, the capital of the Mughal Empire, and simply walked in like he owned the place, because he did now. What happened next is one of the most extraordinary looting operations in human recorded history. Nader took everything. The Peacock Throne, gone. The Kohinoor diamond, gone. Mountains of gold, silver, jewels, silks, weapons, horses, all of it loaded onto 700 elephants, 4,000 camels, and 12,000 horses, and carried back to Persia. Historians estimate the value of what Nader took from India at somewhere between $50 billion and $100 billion in today's money. He took so much wealth that he suspended taxes in Persia for 3 years. 3 years, no taxes, just because he had too much money. He was by any measure the most powerful and the richest man alive. But power at this scale does something to a human being. It begins to consume them. Here is where Nader Shah's story stops being triumphant and becomes something far darker. After India, Nader continued fighting. He always continued fighting. Campaigns against the Ottomans, against the Uzbeks, against rebels inside Persia itself. And with each passing year, something in him began to fracture. The man who was once a brilliant, controlled strategic genius started becoming something else entirely. The paranoia came first. Nader began seeing betrayal everywhere, in every quiet conversation, in every closed door, in every soldier who looked at him the wrong way. He started executing commanders, men who had fought loyally beside him for decades on the suspicion of disloyalty. Then came the taxation. Remember those 3 tax-free years after India? They ended, and when they ended, Nader needed money again for his endless wars. But this time, instead of looting foreign empires, he turned to extract from his own people. He taxed them into starvation. He sent tax collectors who were essentially state-sponsored looters. Entire villages were destroyed if they couldn't pay. People were tortured, mutilated, and killed for falling behind on payments. The man who had once saved Persia was now destroying it from within. In 1741, someone tried to assassinate him. An arrow was fired at Nader while he was on campaign. It missed. But Nader became convinced, without evidence, that his own son, Reza Kolimeza, had ordered the hits. Therefore, in an act of horror that shocked the entire world, Nader had his own son's eyes gouged out, blinded, his own flesh and blood. The moment he realized what he had done, the moment he saw his son weeping, sightless, Nader reportedly broke down in anguish. He understood he had just committed an act of irreversible barbarism against an innocent man, but there was no going back. The guilt destroyed what was left of his sanity. From that point forward, Nader Shah was not a king. He was a wounded, paranoid, grief-maddened animal with an army. The executions multiplied. The torture became more extreme. He ordered towers to be built, not of stone, but of the living heads of those he had punished, their bodies left to rot beneath. He was becoming a monster, and everyone around him knew it. Which brings us to the night everything ended. It is June 1747. Nader Shah is camped in the region of Khorasan, the very same land where he was born in poverty all those decades ago. He is 58 years old. He should, by any logic, be enjoying the fruits of his incredible life. Instead, he is unraveling completely. The rumors are spreading through camp like poison. Nader is planning another mass purge, another wave of executions. This time, his own senior commanders, men like Salah Khan and the chiefs of his personal guard, are on the list. They have a choice: wait to be killed or act first. They choose to act first. In the deep of night, a small group of officers slip into the royal camp. The guards either bribed or too afraid to resist, let them through. They enter Nader Shah's tent. He wakes up. In the darkness, he reaches for his sword. He actually manages to wound 2 of his attackers before they overwhelm him. Even at the very end, even half mad and half asleep, Nader Shah fought, but it wasn't enough. The swords came down, and the man who started life as a slave, who rebuilt a broken empire, who looted the throne of India, who made the entire world bow, died in a tent, in the dark, killed by his own men. His head was cut off. His body was left where it fell. No grand funeral, no mourning procession, no eulogies read by weeping courtiers, just silence. The story of Nader Shah is not just a story about one man. It is a story about what happens when power has no limits, when there is no check, no accountability, no one brave enough to say no. When a man convinces himself that every human being around him is either a tool or a threat and nothing in between. Nader Shah was, in many ways, one of the most remarkable human beings who ever lived. His rise is almost literally impossible by every measure of history. A slave who became a king, or nobody who conquered the world. But greatness and goodness are not the same thing. He built an empire on the bones of the innocent. He blinded his own son. He taxed his own people into graves. He turned every loyal friend into a potential enemy. And in the end, the thing that killed him wasn't a foreign army. It wasn't a rival king. It wasn't the Afghans or the Ottomans or the Mughals. It was the simple, cold arithmetic of fear. He made the people around him so terrified of what he might do next that they had no choice but to act first. The tyrant was not betrayed. The tyrant created his betrayal, and that is a lesson that has no expiration date. Thank you guys for watching. Do well to like, comment, share, subscribe, and walk with me again through the eyes of history.